Hey guys, welcome to the third video in the Beginners Training Essentials series. So for this video we are going to discuss a couple of training templates because I've been giving you a lot of conceptual knowledge and unless you can put it into a training program and actually execute all of that concepts or actually apply those concepts in the execution of your training itself, it is not going to be that useful. So for that reason I thought I'll do a couple of basic training templates. We're going to discuss a 3 days a week training template and a 4 days a week training template. I'll also talk a little bit about how you can adapt this 3 days a week training template into a 2 days a week training program. Right? So we're going to start off with a 3 days a week program. We spoke about how movement patterns can be classified into push, pull, which can be further classified into horizontal or vertical, and squat and a hinge, right? So we're going to look at how to arrange those patterns across the 3 weeks to come up with a holistic training program. Based on again your goals, we'll adjust some of your finisher or isolation work at the end based on whether you're looking to gain weight. By gain weight I mean gain muscle, or lose fat, or body recomposition, which is basically losing fat and gaining muscle at the same time, which can happen if you're a beginner. So to begin with, we're going to look at some fundamental patterns around which you're going to structure each training day. For that, for the 3 days a week program, I've picked the squat, some kind of a push move, and a deadlift variation. So why these three moves particularly is because the squat one would hit most of the front of your lower body muscles, and the deadlift would hit all of your erectors, your back muscles, your glutes, your hamstrings, all of that. And some kind of an upper body push move would cover your chest, shoulders, triceps, all of that. And you're anyway going to be doing some kind of an upper body pull move every training day. So this would help you cover all of the muscles in your body, which is why we're picking these exercises. Now we spoke about frequency, where we spoke about training each pattern or muscle group at least twice a week is a good idea. If you can train them more, maybe 2 to 4 times might be a good idea for some exercises, but for some heavy moves you might be better off doing this twice a week. So now we're going to look at how that is arranged here. So for beginners, for the most part, it is not necessary to split your training into muscle groups or upper body or lower body or anything of the sort. Because while yes, you can do a lot more exercises for the upper body if you do it that way, there is also something called overall systemic stress, which is what kind of drives the hormonal responses that cause muscle growth. And to achieve a threshold of that stress, it is necessary that you put in a certain amount of work into each workout. And as a beginner, when you don't have a lot of skill with the exercises, a complete upper body day may not be a great idea. You're much better off doing full body workouts for at least 3 to 6 months when you start out, until you build a certain level of strength. So for that reason, the 3 days a week template is going to be full body, where we kind of cover squat, hinge, push, pull, which is basically all the 4 major patterns. Your day 2 is going to be again push, pull, single leg, which is also kind of like a squat pattern, because a straight up squat is basically a bilateral 2-leg squat is like that, whereas a single leg split squat would be something like that, where you're primarily working just your front leg. So the difference is just that you're going to work each limb separately rather than doing a 2-legged squat. So it still kind of covers all of the muscles in your body. And one new pattern I'm kind of going to introduce here is knee flexion or bridging. I didn't want to confuse you guys too much in the previous video, which is why I kind of spoke about just the major 4 patterns, not even the single leg that much. So a bridge is basically a glute bridge or a hip thrust. You can look it up. You'll find millions of videos on YouTube. So that kind of works primarily your butt muscles, which are called glutes. And a knee flexion is basically like a leg curl. If you've gone to a regular gym, you would have seen leg curl machines there, which also kind of work your hamstrings, basically, because your hamstring attaches both at your hip and at your knee and can act on both of these joints. It can extend your hips that way, which is basically a hinge or a deadlift type move, or it can also bend your knee that way, which is what we call knee flexion. Right? So to cover that as well, we are going to include that pattern also. And on day 3, again, if you look at it, there is a deadlift, there is a single leg, which is kind of like a squat, and then there is pull and a push. So basically you're covering all patterns every day. Right? So when you look at how many sets and reps you're going to do, 2 to 4 sets per exercise. Each exercise every time you do is a good number to start at. And reps, I would say, stick somewhere between 6 and 12. If it is the primary move for the day, let's say the squat, the push and the deadlift, maybe somewhere between 6 and 8 reps, just so that you can load it heavy and go hard on it. And for your other quote unquote accessory moves, so basically not the primary focus of the day, you could do slightly higher reps and reduced loads. This is also a good idea because the amount of stress you're going to put on your body through the primary move is going to be so high that you will be fairly fatigued and you may not be able to load your other moves as heavily. So it is kind of smart to load your primary moves heavy and then kind of drop the loads for the rest of the exercises in the workout and kind of increase the reps to still get like a lot of training stress out of it. But for the most part, you're going to stick between 6 and 12 rep range. Now let's say your goal is to build muscle. You don't really have fat loss goals, you can train only 3 days a week, you want to get stronger, build muscle. So in that case, you're going to incorporate some isolation work. For this, with 3 days, you only have so much time. You can't train you can still train your calves multiple times across the week if you don't mind adding in some calf work every day, which I would definitely suggest if you have the time. Otherwise, just as like a basic starting point, you can do some calf work on your squat day, you can use some tricep work on your upper body day, because since you're doing a primary push move that is anyway going to fatigue your tricep a little bit, and then adding in more lighter, higher rep tricep work would be a good idea. And on the deadlift day where your grip is anyway going to be taxed, your forearms are going to be taxed, you're also going to be doing some pull work, adding in some bicep work at the end makes sense. Now if you notice, I have said core in all of these days. So when it comes to quote unquote core training, it's kind of how do I put it? So if you go and ask 10 different trainers what the core is, you might get 10 different answers. It is not really clearly defined. And what does the core do in isolation? Outside of transferring force from your lower limbs to your upper limbs or upper limbs to your lower limbs, it's very hard to define what else it does on its own. Yeah, you can say your abdominal muscles flex your spine that way, true. But in the large scheme of things, when you look at global patterns that the human body does, it kind of acts as a force transmitter from top to bottom or bottom to top. Right? For example, if you're doing a squat, you're going to hold the bar on your back, or you might hold a dumbbell in your hand to do a goblet squat, right? So now as I go down, now on the way up my legs are doing all the work, but how is that force being transmitted to the dumbbell in my hand or the bar on my back? It is through my core, right? So by keeping this stiff and stable, I'm able to transmit that force a lot more efficiently than I otherwise would. Let's say as I'm squatting down, my back collapses and then I have to stand back up again like that, right? So that's not necessarily a great idea because there is not efficient force transfer. And contrary to what most people might say, that is not necessarily the only cause of back injuries. Injuries happen because of exceeding your tissue's ability to or capacity to bear load, not necessarily because you did a movement wrong. There is no such thing as like a wrong movement. If your human body is built to go into those ranges and do that movement, it is not particularly wrong. But for every movement and tissue, there is a certain tolerable load limit. If you exceed that, that is when you increase your injury chances, not necessarily because you rounded your back. Yeah. So when it comes to core, what I really mean here is there are a few movements that I like to do that I think have some value. If you're a complete beginner, have not played sports before, have not done any kind of physical activity before in your life, including some kind of like crunch type work, which is like direct abdominal work that would put tension in your abdominal muscles and build those muscles and help build strength there, could be worthwhile. Doing some kind of plank work, that stability, holding your hips in position, teaches you stability that might transfer to other moves like a squat or a push-up or a deadlift. So that has some value if you're a beginner. And in certain cases, doing some kind of side planks and stuff can also be useful because you're learning to stabilize your pelvis and your hips from different positions. Outside of that, I don't think core work has a lot of value. You're much better off spending your time in the gym doing other heavier work. So Isolation, you're going to look at some kind of calf work, some kind of tricep work here, some kind of bicep work here. I'm not going to go into how you can modify this template, just to keep it simple and give you a starting point rather than confusing you. And moving on to if your goal is fat loss or body recomposition, right? In that case, adding in some kind of like a finisher. We spoke about how to include cardio in your programs in the previous video. I'm not going to go into what kind of exercises you can do because that really doesn't matter. It's just getting your heart rate up and making sure you keep moving for that period of time. That is what is going to give you the calorie burn. No specific exercise is really going to do that. All of them are the same if you keep moving through that period of time. Right? So you can look up finishers on YouTube. You will find millions of burn this, burn that kind of finishers. Do any of them, whatever suits you. It really doesn't matter. And this SS here stands for steady state. Like I said, if you're not someone who has ever trained before or played sports before, you will definitely be better off doing some low intensity steady state type of cardio, like jogging or maybe some spending 20 minutes on the EFX at a moderate pace, rowing for 10, 15, 20 minutes, walking even. Stuff like that would help build up your aerobic capacity. On top of which you can do conditioning work later as you get better at this. Otherwise, conditioning work is not really going to be high intensity conditioning work. Your intensity is going to drop very quickly because your body is not conditioned enough to handle it. So it is anyway going to become cardio type work, steady state cardio type work. So yeah, take this template, apply it as is. We're going to do 2 to 4 sets of each exercise, anywhere between 6 to 12 reps. If they are the primary moves, head towards the lower rep range. As you move towards the later parts of the workout, lighter loads, higher reps is a better idea to start. Right? Now, going from here, we're going to discuss the 4 days a week training template. Now, with this, the major difference here is going to be on every day. When I do the squat, I also have, because I have one extra training day where I can fill in 4 more exercises. Whoops. So, going from there to the 4 days a week training template, right? Now, because I have one extra training day to like kind of put in more exercises, I can do 4 more exercises across the week. And because of this, I'm going to increase the stress on my on the particular muscle group or primary pattern that I'm training each day. So let's say I'm doing a squat day. The difference between this and this is that I've taken the push out because I anyway have one extra day and I can fill in push elsewhere, and I've added a single leg move here, which means the amount of stress I'm going to put on my quads is going to be much higher within the same session compared to a 3 days a week training template. Now here, if you notice, I still have some kind of pull work every day. That is because, like we discussed in the previous video, your upper back muscles and your shoulder muscles can take can handle a lot more training than your other muscles can, and because of that reason, we are going to throw in some kind of pull work every day, right? And we're going to do some kind of a squat, some kind of a single leg work. We're going to do some pull work. It could be horizontal or vertical. If you're doing 4 pulls across the week, just alternate horizontal and vertical. And you're going to add in some kind of a hinge work as well, because this is more lower body dominant than upper body dominant or like a full body day, right? And from there, again going into isolation and cardio prescription, it's the same as your 3 days a week template. And from there, going into the upper body, the pattern is the same. You're going to do push, you're going to do some kind of push accessory. Let's say you did dumbbell bench press or barbell bench press here. You could do some incline bench press or push-ups or even some shoulder presses. And we're going to do some kind of pull work again. Let's say you did rows here, you're going to do lat pull downs here or chin-ups, and then you're going to do some shoulder work. When it comes to shoulder work, by shoulders I particularly mean isolation work. For the most part, I would suggest you do lateral delt work, which would be lateral raises, upright rows, stuff like that, because that is the part of the muscle that doesn't get hit by all the major patterns. Because when you do rows, chin-ups and stuff, the back part of your shoulder muscle anyway gets worked, and when you do push-ups or bench presses or overhead presses, the front part of your shoulder anyway gets worked. So it's the side part that gets slightly neglected. So doing a lot more lateral raises and upright rows might be a good idea. So the next thing we're going to look at is arm work. So between the 2 upper body days, if you look at how you can split the arm work between maybe triceps and biceps, you could also do both on both days. That could also work. But if you're looking to do just one each time, you don't have time to do a lot of stuff, then I would say on the day where you do more push work, put your tricep work in there, because anyway you're fatiguing your tricep with all the heavy push work, and adding more stress on top with lighter loads and lots of reps might be a good idea. Again, with the core work and cardio and finisher stuff, it's the same recommendation as here. We're just going to adjust the amount of time you spend doing the cardio based on the parameters we spoke about in the previous video, where we talked about setting up your training, right? And going to day number 3. Again, it's pretty similar to the 3 days, the third day from the 3 days template. You're going to do deadlift, you're going to do some kind of single leg work, you're going to do some kind of pull work, and then from there, since we've taken out the knee flexion and bridge work from this day, you're going to put that leg curl or bridge work into your deadlift day, right? So if you look at it, your deadlift is going to work all of your back muscles, your glutes, your hamstrings. Your single leg muscle work is going to work your front of your thigh, your quadriceps, and again you're working your upper back with this, and the leg curl will again train the other function, the secondary function of your hamstring, which is bending your knee. Again, you're kind of training your entire body. Now, on this day also you could add in some bicep work, because from all the grip intensive deadlift work that you've done and the rowing or the pulling work that you've done, you have put some kind of strain on your forearms and biceps anyway, and you could choose to do some bicep work there. Again, other stuff, core, finisher, cardio is all the same as before, and we're going to look at the final and 4th day. So now on this day, your primary move could either be a push. Let's say you did like a bench press or a push up here. You could probably do like a vertical push, like an overhead press type of move, or you could do some kind of like a pull work as a primary move also. This could be TRX rows if you're a beginner, if you can't do chin-ups. The TRX rows are basically suspension trainer rows. It could be bent over rows. It could be chin-ups if you can do them. And like I spoke about, it could be overhead press. Now the second move that you're going to do is also going to be a pull. Now let's say you did some kind of like vertical pulling here, like chin-ups. You're going to do some kind of horizontal pulling here, which is some kind of a row, like a seated row, or maybe like a one-arm dumbbell row, whatever suits you, right? And you're also going to do some kind of a push work. Again, just alternate between horizontal and vertical, and make sure you hit both of these patterns 2 to 3 times across the week, at least 2 to 3 times across the week. And again, after that, you're going to go into some shoulder work, same recommendations as day 2, focus more on lateral delt work, and again, arms could be more bicep focused or bicep and tricep, and yeah, finisher and cardio is going to remain the same. So those are the 2 basic templates that you could kind of get started with. Now from here, let's say you're doing only 2 days across the week. You have time to train only twice across the week. What do you do in that case? Now you're going to keep day 1 as is. You're going to do squat, push, pull, hinge as is. Again, here you may not really be able to do calf work or anything of that sort. You can choose to add some more single leg work on that day. Just because you're training only 2 days, you can give 2 days of break between your training days and do a slightly higher stress training day, where basically apart from these 4, instead of adding in isolation or cardio, you're going to add in one more quad dominant move, a single leg move, for example. And your second day, you're going to start off with your deadlifts, because these 2 are going to give you the most bang for your buck in the gym, because they're the moves on which you can load up the heaviest and stimulate the most amount of musculature. So you're going to start off with a deadlift, you're going to do some kind of single leg work, push-pull remains the same. Now when you come to the end, you're going to add in some kind of like a knee flexion or bridge type work to make sure you're covering all the functions of your hamstring muscles. Now outside of that, you can do some arm work here and there on either day. You can do some calf work, you can do some finisher or cardio based on your goals. If you want fat loss or body recomp, add in some kind of like a cardio at the end of both days. You could also add in some kind of walking here and there across the week. That we have found it to be very, very effective with fat loss folks. Adding in half-an-hour walks a couple of times across the week is a great idea. And outside of that, you don't really have much freedom to mess with the 2 days template, because you need to get the basic work done. So there you go. You have a 2 days a week training template, a 3 days a week training template, and a 4 days a week training template. I do know I have not discussed particular exercises on these templates itself. I've just given you patterns. The next video is going to be about basic exercises for each of these patterns and sort of like 1 or 2 progressions for each of them. Right? So I'll probably hit you guys up with that video next week. Thanks for watching this video.